How did lefties somehow find themselves in the same stupid position as fucking progressives a few years ago? Do you guys know what? Are you fucking stupid? What algorithms are you writing? What are you just writing Hello World over and over again?
You know, cooks and everything.
Everything
That
you
whole
just
thing
described
is-
is pretty easy. You learn it in about a week. The stigma doesn't exist because of how we talk about it. The stigma exists because they're not earning much money, because they're selling labor that doesn't have a very high value. He knows that his job is shit. He knows that his skill set isn't very in demand. You don't have to treat him like a Hold on 1 second. Hold on.
I know.
The suggestion that any job is low skill is a myth perpetuated by wealthy interests to justify inhumane work. We have to choose like a different term besides low skill, because low skill is like offensive to people. The reality is that there are some jobs that are way easier to train people to work than other jobs. If every single computer programmer in the country quit, we would be pretty fucked. If every single janitor quit, you can train other people to be janitors relatively easily. But people hear low skill and they think, oh, you think since it's low skill, that means it's easy? You think since it's low skill, these people are inhuman, subhuman fucks? Like, okay. Then you had YouTubers like Critical calling a woman Karen. Critical just should never talk about anything related to politics or social issues ever. He'd be good. I'm not gonna lie. For the longest time, I thought Critical and I think I said this before. I thought Critical and that one guy were the same person. The guy that does Seth, that does like video game reviews. They have like a similar cadence. They do like the monotone. Hey guys, Critical here. Hey guys, Seth here. Coming at you with another video review. I don't know, man. I worked at Taco Bell and as a software engineer, and the job that takes way more skill is not the one you would expect. I just don't think people know what skill means or whatever. Or they assume that it's just like difficulty or whatever. Or physical demand or something, maybe? Yeah, I don't know. Effort? Yeah. Are they just mixing up being smart with low skill? No, it's just that, like... I don't know what the social push is, but basically every single phrase that can be one step removed from maybe having a negative implication from it becomes the negative implication. So somebody might be able to say like, oh, your job is low skill, and that sounds like an insult. Well, now low skill is an insult. Or somebody may be able to say like, oh, like your job is like entry level. Oh, well now entry level just means stupid. Or like, it's just like every single possible thing just like becomes like the most negative version of itself that it can be. It's just stupid as fuck. I'm dead.
Do you like the term accessible jobs instead of low-skilled jobs? As a positive connotation, but still implies the job can be done by more people.
It's just stupid. People are just babies about everything. We could all pick up software dev if we need to? That stupid tweet? How did lefties somehow find themselves in the same stupid position as fucking progressives a few years ago? Do you guys know what I'm thinking of? Do you guys know the hashtag that I'm thinking of? Yes, exactly. It's the learn to code shit. True. How is it that the same lefties that are like, anybody can pick up a job being a dev, it's so easy? How are these the same people that are like, actually school is unethical and immoral because it literally fucking traumatizes you? Wait, well, which one is it? Is the school that you have to go to learn how to become a dev traumatizing? Or is it the easiest fucking shit in the world? Making a quesadito during lunch rush is 10 times harder than writing any sort of algorithm. Service jobs are not low skill, bro. Like, are you fucking stupid? What algorithms are you writing? What are you just writing Hello World over and over again? 13,000 likes. People are like quote tweeting me, like trying to like say like, oh well, I guess being a Twitch streamer must be a low skill job. Yeah, it is. Anybody could be a Twitch streamer, but to be a Twitch streamer on top, it's probably a little bit harder. It's like saying like, oh, it's like comparing like, oh, you think that making food is a low skill job? Oh, so anybody can be Gordon Ramsay? No, you dumb fuck. But you're not Gordon Ramsay. The person making the quesadillas at Taco Bell is not Gordon Ramsay. Okay, what's up?
Yeah, what's up, man?
Nothing much. How you doing?
Catching some dubs today.
Yep, trying to.
I pray that you do great. All right, so low-skilled workers.
Yeah.
The AOC tweet. So I think the 2 points to argue here. Number one, I think it's how should this conversation be had? Is low-skill worker accurate to describe these workers? And number two is, does the term low-income, or not low-income, but low-skill worker stigmatize people to the point where they're put into worse conditions, like low incomes and like worse healthcare? So this AOC tweet you reacted to, she was reacting to a tweet from Eric Adams, or not a tweet, but a tweet from what he said in his press conference. So he essentially said, and this is actually a pretty progressive thing that he was trying to get across. He was saying all the big banks need to have their workers in person. We cannot do remote working because we have all these low-skill workers out here like cooks, messengers, and Dunkin' Donuts employees that don't have the academic skills to sit in a corner office. That was actually a pretty progressive thing, you know? You bank workers, you office workers, you don't have to face the pandemic. You get to sit inside. Why are you working from home? Meanwhile, all these poor workers are working. I don't think he said that right. So AOC reacted to that tweet by saying, the suggestion that any job is low skill is a myth perpetuated by wealthy interests to justify inhumane working conditions, little to no healthcare, and low wages. Plus, being a waitress has made me and many others better at our jobs, now that they've known that life. And you said, low skill just means that anyone can be trained for the job with relative ease, and the worker is replaceable with any other, and they can also be replaced relatively easily. This is a real thing. Acknowledge reality, please. I appreciate the sassiness. That really got across pretty well. I wanted to ask you first what your relation to these terms are, because you said before that you your two jobs, you said something about a casino, right? And what was the other one?
My first job was a paper boy. Then I did janitor work at my high school, and then I was a McDonald's employee for a while, and then I was kind of like a front of house, back of house person at a casino restaurant, and then I became a supervisor at the restaurant in a casino.
All right, and do you think all those
cleaning.
jobs, do you think like all those jobs fit into the same category of like low skill?
Yeah, relatively. Anybody with no education could pick up the vast majority of the skill set in a week or two. If I would get fired, it's pretty easy to find a person to replace me. Little education requirement, yeah, low barrier to entry.
Do you think there is some type of skill that workers get, like if you're a waitress or if you're working at a casino, and you're like, oh, this is going to be rush hour, how do I navigate this? Or do you just think that's kind of like something that anybody can sort of do?
Anybody can pick it up. I mean, maybe not anybody. If you've got like severe anxiety or some shit, maybe not.
Okay. So the terms I use to discuss labor, if you want to use the really technical way, and if you don't care about the societal impact of what rhetoric you're going to be using, I would say, and tell me if you disagree, I would say that low skill should be referring to people who are literally doing pure manual labor. This is literally pick stuff up, put stuff down. A lot of farm workers would be considered in this category of low skill labor. If you look at the Department of Labor, they would actually consider jobs like being a waitress, being a food worker, especially in New York City when you're delivering food. It's pretty crazy there, especially during the pandemic. It's hard to do that effectively, to do that job very well, to be a waitress and to know who your customers are, to get the food out quickly and to have that whole cohesiveness with your unit too, cooks and everything.
Everything
that
you just described is pretty easy. You learn it in about a week.
In about a week. So you think somebody can come in a week and do just as good as a waitress that's been working for 2 years on a job at a restaurant?
Just as good, maybe not, but yeah, I think you could pick up the vast majority of skills in like a week. You'd get like 85% of the way there, and then maybe over a month you can like refine it, sure.
Do you think having to see people and work directly with people every single day for like, for example, if you work at like McDonald's, you're on your feet for 8 hours a day, you're in hot weather, you have to deal with a bunch of really, I would have to say unpleasant people, I'd assume. Do you think that's some type of a skill that would put you above low skill?
No, it's all. Anybody can learn this. Anybody can learn to work in a hot climate. We're all human beings. We all have the same biological
Anybody can learn
foundation.
anything. But we're talking
No,
about
no, no,
how
no, no,
much
no, no, no,
learning
no, no, no.
takes.
Hold on. I'm using a very specific set of words here. Okay.
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 Hold on. I just hold on 1 second. Hold on.
I know.
Do you think it would be easier for me to train somebody to be a good waitress or a good quantitative analysis that works at a Wall Street hedge fund?
Well, of course, it would be easier to do one versus the other. But my
Okay, do you
argument
think
is
that it would
they're
be quicker to train somebody to be a banker, somebody that works intimately in the banking industry, or a banker or like a customer service person that manages accounts and shit at a bank, or somebody to be a dishwasher?
Well, it would take more training to do any job that requires working with people, working with a complex system, working with numbers.
Okay,
working to do
these
all of
are
that
generally
stuff.
considered high-skill jobs. The employees are a little bit less easily replaceable. The amount of training tends to be far higher. Okay, that's what a high-skill versus a low-skill job means. So you agree that that's a real thing. You just don't like the word that it's called.
Yeah, I think the word that it's called has bad
Okay,
connotations.
so
associated
instead of
with it.
trying to argue that it's not a real thing, try to argue that it's a real thing, but you don't like the terminology. Okay,
But if you want to be really precise.
No,
the
it's
Department
not
of
about
Labor would
being
consider that
precise.
Semi-skill. It would consider it semi-skill. There's a
Then
middle
everything.
ground.
No, hold on. One of the highest skill things you do is walking, but nobody calls it high skill because everybody learns how to walk. Okay, that doesn't make it a high. Like, these are the words that everybody's familiar with. Everybody immediately knows what these things mean. To deny that there's a differentiation between high skill and low skill labor because you don't like the words is silly. Now, if you want to say these words hurt my feelings, or I want to use a different word for some reason, that's fine. But like, don't try to obfuscate with these weird like, well, every job is hard and every job has skill. Sure, but some are obviously harder to train into than others. This is just everybody in society knows this.
With the technical definition, I would say that jobs that require no high school degree and no understanding of how people work, like picking up boxes or like working in a field, that is a lot different from a job that mostly requires a high school degree, which would be considered semi-skill when you're being a waitress, when you're working in jobs, when you're working as a bank
Okay,
teller.
if you want to
You're not
break out
working-
low-skill
you don't need to be
workers,
in the analytical
Sure.
department to have some type of skills.
if you want to break out low-skill workers into semi-skill workers and low-skill workers, you can. Nobody is going to have any idea what the fuck you're talking about because nobody in the real world uses these terms. But if you want to break it out into that, then by all means, knock yourself out.
So I guess we can move into the terminology. And what we should be using, what words we should be using to discuss this. And No Opinion on Twitter had a tweet. He said, the terms low-skilled and high-skilled are insulting, yes. But somebody give me a better way to say possessing skills that command a high premium in the labor market versus not possessing such skills, without typing those phrases out every time. Now, Eric Adams here, mayor of New York, when he's talking about workers that need to be frontline during the pandemic, instead of saying low skill, he could probably just say, food service workers, home health care workers. He could say people who work in manual labor because that's what it is. It's manual labor. And people are already disincentivized from doing low labor work in America. And I can send you numbers if you want me to, because the paradox is the more education you have, like me, for example, I'm about to finish my master's in public policy. The more education you have, you're going to be working in an office. You're going to have a less physically demanding job, and likely a less mentally demanding job because physiological weighs into the psychological. But if you're going to be somebody who doesn't
Just
have
real
any
quick, you're playing
education-
word games right now when you say that, right? Less mentally demanding because the physiological way, you're playing like word games, right? If you want to say like less mentally demanding because it's hard to like be poor, then I guess like McDonald's has the highest physiologically demanding and mentally demanding job because you have to know that you're a McDonald's worker while you're doing it. You're playing word games when you do this. If you want to play word games, you can play word games. But at the end of the day, that initial tweet from the Adam Schiff guy stands 100%. Some skills are more in demand than others because it's very, very, very easy to learn some skills and it's very difficult to learn others. That is just absolutely true.
But one of the reasons right now in America, the labor crisis is with low-income positions is largely because people have these positions as stigmatized in Americans' heads. And that's also one reason.
No, that is
100, I'll
absolutely.
send you.
Sure. This is why I don't like the path that you're going down is because it leads you to fundamentally, you're working a master's in public health policy or whatever. What'd you say? And you think the reason people don't work some of these lower paid jobs is because there's a stigma around them?
That's 100% one of the reasons. I know. Okay.
Well, one of the reasons.
Of course, there's one of the reasons. There's not one defining reason for
The,
why
okay, the
anything
massive,
happens.
overwhelming reason is probably going to be because our labor force participation rate is declining. We don't have that many people willing to work these low wage jobs. Our unemployment is less than, I think, 4.5% right now. And our labor force participation rate is starting to fall pretty substantially as boomers enter retirement. It's not because these jobs are stigmatized. If you start calling McDonald's wage earners high-skilled laborers, people aren't going to be clamoring to earn $11.50 an hour flipping burgers at
You
McDonald's.
don't call them high skilled, but you don't.
Whatever
call them low skilled.
like friendly word that you want to use to talk down to people that are working at fucking McDonald's, you can use whatever word you want, but it's not going to incentivize people to work these jobs because we're reducing the stigma around it. The stigma doesn't exist because of how we talk about it. The stigma exists because they're not earning much money, because they're selling labor that doesn't have a very high value.
Okay. I would argue that there is a stigma around it. I personally know people who make less money than some McDonald's workers. They complain about the McDonald's workers making more money. For example, somebody that works at a pharmacy counting pills behind the counter. There's a lot less stigma associated with being, and anybody in your audience, if they're being honest, they'll agree that there's some stigma associated with being a Walmart or a McDonald's worker versus something else that's more private, that you don't have to be wearing a McDonald's uniform, talking to people in your own community. That is something that people do not want to be a part of.
Sure, but but not because, I don't think it's just because it's a McDonald's worker. It's because of what it represents. And our society that highly values consumerism, that highly values the amount of money you make, the success you have in life, which is only measured through the acquisition of like fucking more capitalist goods, then the reason why these jobs are looked down on is because you're not earning very much money. And then people are like, oh, I don't want to be that guy that works at McDonald's and can't pay for my kids' college, or can't go on vacation in fucking Disney World, or whatever fucking shit people like to do with their money.
I'm talking about a very slight rhetorical shift that might aid one variable that might aid in destigmatizing certain kinds of work. Food service work, I think that's a fine way to describe it. If you have somebody that you know that's very smart, you can call them very smart, and that's fine. That is great. You're encouraging them to do better. But if you have a friend who is not very smart, you probably shouldn't go up to them and say, hey, idiot. Just because they're the lowest common denominator doesn't mean you need to call them that, because the positions they're in, they don't want to be in that position. And people don't want to work these jobs that have the highest demand right now in our labor economy. And I can send you this data if you want to look over it. Low income jobs are largely just viewed as jobs for immigrants. I think the numbers are 3 out of 4 farm workers in the U.S. Are immigrants. Americans don't want to get caught doing these jobs, even if, and I'd have to go further on data for that, but I could do that at a later point if you want. Even if they will be making more money, taking these stigmatized positions, they don't want to do it.
So let's flip this. So you think that if all else equal, if people were like, oh, being a McDonald's worker is cool or whatever, that people would want to do it? That people are like, oh, actually, I'm happy now being a McDonald's worker because we don't call it low skill anymore. We call it semi-skilled.
I'm not saying it's going to make them feel good about it, but it's going to aid in the social cohesion of what that job is.
Okay, hold on. Wait. Hold on. Wait. Okay. I'm a smart person and I know what these words mean, okay? So you're not going to just pull euphemistic bullshit over me, okay? When you say aid in the social cohesion of these jobs, you're saying make them feel better in normal people talk, in non-academic language. That's what you're saying, right? So I'll repeat this again, and without trying to like parse it through how you would write a school paper, okay? Respond to me, right? So you're saying, okay, that, or if I'm misunderstanding you, then rephrase it, okay? Or tell me I'm wrong. You're saying that if we call these jobs not low skill, but something different, you're saying that people will have a better feeling about these jobs, about the jobs they're working, all else equal.
All right. If make people feel better, you sometimes have better outcomes. Or I can't use the word outcomes.
What are better outcomes? Like they'll feel better about their McDonald's job because we call them semi-skilled workers.
Or people will have more, I don't want to use the word empathy. That sounds too I don't know.
Okay.
College or whatever.
Okay, I understand your college. I understand your problem, okay? This is how I felt, okay? And you know what? Maybe I was wrong, okay? Whenever I walked into my shit-ass fucking $5.25 an hour McDonald's job, and I would see a sign on the wall that would say like, hey, appreciate our workers, blah, 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 blah. You know what I would think every single time? And I might just be a fucking sociopathic retard. Maybe I was, okay? But when I would see signs like that, you know what I think? Like, if you like me more, fucking pay me more. I don't give a fuck if you call me a shift lead or like a. They had all these euphemisms at McDonald's for like high achieving fucking. I don't remember. There were so many dumb words. I'm like, what the fuck is this? And everybody just refers to it. And oh, that just means you're a supervisor. Oh, that just means you're a shift lead. Not like a team captain or whatever other bullshit they're trying to. Right? If you want it more, if you want to make people feel better about it, then pay them more. I don't need the fucking signs or whatever. Now maybe that's just me, but my guess is going to be that the reason why people are so upset about these positions is just because it doesn't enable them to do very much in life. They don't get paid very much. They end up like having shitty outcomes related to how much they get paid. And that's why people are upset, not because of what people call their job titles. That's my guess. I could be wrong, but that would be my guess.
I don't necessarily or completely disagree with anything you said. I do think AOC being, I guess, yeah, she's definitely a leftist, anti-capitalist. I don't know if she really says that as much as like a Bernie would, because she's trying to actually be more popular. But I think it is a miscalculation to focus too much on what people are called, but I also don't think it's a fight that's not worth having whatsoever. If people do have more understanding of, hey, these jobs are actually something that's important. If we want to place the word essential workers on people to give them more value, then I can understand why.
But here's the problem is the problem is the roads that it's leading you down, the erosion of your mind. Is because now we've got phrases like, oh, well, these are essential workers. Well, an essential worker needs an essential pay. Not if the job is something that every single person in society can do. We need to have a different mechanism by which people like this are taken care of, because it's not going to be via just like fucking, like, oh, we're going to magically pay you $1 million to be a fucking McDonald's worker or a garbage can delivery person. We need another mechanism in society by which to take care of these people. These wages are going to be magically boosted because people that are working on their masters in public policy on Twitter are trying to call them a different name. Because everybody on the ground knows the reality that anybody can train to be a McDonald's employee, not anybody can train to be doing something in an office job that somebody would pay you to do. That's the issue, I think, is that it's causing people to lose what is actually important in these conversations.
I think this can be aided, what she's trying to accomplish with what she's saying. It can be aided by a tighter labor market where it isn't just like, hey, we're going to have somebody else replace you the moment you walk out the door, because people don't want to typically do these jobs. And it's probably going to be fluctuating based on the area, of course. If you have a high population area, you're going to be able to find replacement workers a little bit easier than if you're in like a
No, it's not. Hold on, no. You're obfuscating. It's not about being in a higher low population. It's that some jobs, even with the same type of population, are going to be easier to find replacement works than other jobs. That's the point. No matter where you are, it's probably always going to be easier to find a McDonald's worker than somebody that can like run an office job.
But right now, post-pandemic, the biggest deficit is in the low-skilled jobs, as they would say.
Yeah, but not big enough that they're boosting the wages to overcompensate the middle-class fucking working shit. It'll happen, or these like companies will start to cease to exist.
Well, I'd have to do more research.
Research on what? What point of that? Unemployment is very low. You agree? Hold on. You agree that the unemployment is very
wage boom post-pandemic has been blue-collar jobs.
Sure, which is good, which is what you would expect to see. Yeah, sure. So wages will rise eventually, or some companies are not going to be able to. There are going to be some companies that probably can't exist at a certain wage. That'd be my guess. McDonald's probably doesn't exist as a company if they're paying their employees $25 an hour, right?
Exist as a company?
As in, it wouldn't be a viable model. Like, people probably wouldn't buy cheeseburgers for $15 a cheeseburger or whatever. If you have to pay, like, huge wage. There's going to be some number that wages can rise to for some companies. McDonald's can probably afford to pay a few more dollars an hour. We've seen that. This is borne out in a few studies where certain restaurants will raise their wages or minimum wage will go up. They can do it. But there's going to be some number where some companies are no longer competitive or no longer viable. People won't buy their products because of how much you have to increase final cost to the consumer because you're increasing your cost of production, right?
Yeah, if they keep their current margins. I know I'm paying $8 for a Big Mac right now, so they better start paying their workers a little bit more.
Sure, current margins. The margins for the average business is very low. The margins for most companies in the United States are incredibly low. I think it's around 7% is the average margin.
All right, sure. Let's just go back over the two disagreements, and we're not going to agree on this. How should we talk about this? Do you think it can help at all if, like, he came out instead said, hey, we have food service workers who are responsible for delivering food around the city during the pandemic. We have blue-collar workers. We have home healthcare workers. A lot of, like, for example, this is what one of the reasons I care about, not necessarily for fast food workers, but like in Pennsylvania right now, one of the lowest paid working forces is actually at-home care and nursing home workers, and they get paid like $10 to $12 an hour, and their job is literally to change old people and to wipe their asses. And the idea that they don't get enough support through policy, I think you can make the argument that if more people say, hey, these jobs are demanding in some sense, maybe they're not high skill in education, but they are demanding in hours and manual labor. That's why I want to call these manual labor jobs as well, because manual labor is a big stress on people and their livelihood.
Okay, here's the
so when I
let me.
see that-
Okay, the issue right now that you're running into that you're just not understanding, or maybe you do understand this. Okay, you are not compensated for how onerous or difficult the work is. You're compensated based on how many other people possess your skill set and how in demand that skill set is. That's
Okay,
where
yes.
that's where your wages come from. So just
Sure.
going out in public and saying, guys, this work is really hard, is going to have zero impact on those wages. You have to
But if you're
understand that.
talking, if you're talking about wages that are set not by a market but set by a government job, so for example, like a children and youth worker, they have to fight really hard for wage increases. A lot of their jobs, and it's mostly women who are social workers, they have to go into the homes often, or they have to talk to the parents who actually abuse their children, and I don't think it's understood by people enough how important that job is. When you're setting prices, when you're demanding price increases, or not price increases, my bad. When you're demanding wage increases as somebody who is paid by the state or paid by the government, it's a little bit harder because you're not being set by a market
Sure,
price. You're
this is
not
a
being set by
minority of
what
the
you
job
make.
market, and we're talking about something fundamentally different than the original topic now.
But we're still talking about the terminology of using low skill to define these things.
If you just call it semi-skilled or whatever, it's not going to mean the government is all of a sudden going to want to pay
No,
them way
I know. I
more.
said alternate words: food service workers, blue collar workers.
Okay, hold on. Now
healthcare
we're
workers.
going back to the other topic instead of talking. If you're talking about if you're talking about bargaining against the government for wages, that's a fundamentally different thing than the other conversation that we were on.
But if a politician is going to vote to allocate funding for something, it might be better if people are going to say to that politician, "This is an issue I care about." No.
I think we can care. This is my issue. This is my problem with you guys. Okay, you can care about low-skill workers. You don't have to lie to people and treat them like retarded children to pretend to give a fuck about them, right? If a guy works at McDonald's, he knows that his job is shit. He knows that his skill set isn't very in demand. You don't have to treat him like a retard and be nice to him. It's like, oh no, bro, like I totally get that your job is really hard. Just say like, hey, we're either gonna guarantee a higher minimum wage for you. We're gonna have some type of UBI for you. We're gonna increase like tax like incentives or whatever. We're gonna increase the child tax. Like these are the things that you do to help people. Not talking down from the ivory tower and pretending that a guy that works a shit job who knows it's a shit job isn't working a shit job. And it's actually an incredibly amazing position that, wow, being a McDonald's fast food technician that's simultaneously involved with technically operating the machinery in a kitchen in order to optimally serve food that's prepared in a concise manner to customers is just like a fucking burger flipper, okay? They don't need that. I don't think anybody wants to hear that. If you can provide material benefit, do it, but we don't need the euphemistic treadmill to make it sound better and better and better than it actually is.
But I'm saying the political power, you said something about a UBI, which is very, very costly. To get the power necessary to say to people, we need to increase your taxes to pay for this, it's not going to help if they look at workers as low-skill workers. If we're saying, hey, and we have this issue in all across the country with paying firefighters. I came on here a long time ago. I was terrible in that conversation. But we don't pay firefighters in America. Some fire departments need to get paid because they don't have any firefighters in certain areas. We have to ask people to pay a fire tax for that. And in order to get people to pay a fire tax, to pay higher taxes to support firefighters, or if you want to support workers through UBI, if you want to support home healthcare workers, in order to get them to be willing to say, hey, a bigger part of my paycheck is going to go to this, it's good to say, hey, I value, or it's good to get people to value the work that's being done through. It's hard work, it's manual labor, it's not skilled, we know it's not skilled. We know they're not going to be working in offices. We know that. I'm not going to treat anybody like a baby. But I don't think it's really that big of a stance to say we can just make this tiny shift in rhetoric. Not because we're going to say to people, oh, don't feel bad about it. We love you. I love, dude, you made such a good, dude, those fries, those were banging. It's not for that. It's for people who are going to be actually voting on if we're going to make people's livelihoods better. I think that's the overall argument there.
Okay. Anything else, buddy?
No. I don't know. Good luck playing League. Thanks for having me on again. If anybody, I don't really make videos anymore, but I'm Jolah on YouTube, JOLAH. Yeah. I know you said you people a lot during this. It was kind of racist. I'm just kidding. But, yeah, I'm not like a leftist or anything. I do work in like public policy stuff. I know you're a little heated up, but I think if you ever have other policy discussions. We could have some good combos on that and political communications and all that. But anyway, have a good rest of your day, man. Thank you.
I love you. Be careful, buddy.
Good.